On April 25th, 2015, at 3:30 in the morning, I got a phone call that thrust my family and I, our business, and a small nonprofit we founded into a huge disaster for which we had no training, no expertise, and no operating capital. Wow. This disaster would require us and many others to volunteer thousands of hours, raise hundreds of thousands of dollars quickly, and would transform our small nonprofit, Conscious Connections Foundation, temporarily into a disaster relief organization with the responsibility for helping thousands of people in desperate need. This phone call compelled our college-bound son, Cameron, to take a year off to volunteer and spend the bulk of it leading disaster relief work, mostly from the village areas. That impactful phone call was from a Nepali friend, Sita Gurung, who we had known since she was a child in her village 30-some years ago. She was calling to tell me that the rural health clinic we had built together in 2010 had been destroyed in a matter of seconds by the devastating earthquake in Nepal. In fact, everyone we had worked with for the last 30 years in Nepal had been impacted. Their villages and much of the country was in ruins. So ostensibly, this talk is about earthquake relief and our role in it. But what I really want to talk about is the value of relationships, because what we experienced is that it is relationships that really matter when it comes to getting things done in the times of greatest need. It's the unbelievable power of friendships, of caring, and of long-term relationships that allow us as human beings to accomplish great things. So what happened on April 25th, 2015? The country of Nepal experienced an earthquake of 7.9 on the Richter scale. This massive earthquake was the equivalent of 10.7 megatons of TNT being unleashed 9 miles underground. Hundreds of thousands of homes were lost in an instant. Nearly 9,000 people died, and an estimated 22,000 were injured. All of this in a country with little infrastructure, where most areas are barely accessible by road, and the monsoons were but a month away. So why did we receive this phone call in the middle of the night? First, I have to give you a little background. In my husband Rick's words, in the fall of 1984, over 30 years ago, he and I touched down on a runway in Kathmandu, not knowing that this simple touchdown would change the course of our lives. Although we were pursuing degrees in law and environmental science, our time in Nepal convinced us that we needed to take a 180-degree turn. And in 1984, we started the fair trade import business, Ganeshamal Trading, working with small cottage industries and development aid projects in Nepal. When we started our fair trade business, Rick and I felt strongly that by working directly with women and marginalized producers in Nepal, we could help them create security in their lives. We made a commitment to these producers to create long-term business relationships with them. We purchased products from them every 2 months, and we developed a business model that created mutual interdependence. So as we prospered, they also prospered. We stuck with our producer partners through many, many difficult times, including a 10-year civil war that ravaged Nepal. So now fast forward 32 years, and here we are still doing the same business, and it's working. we are happy to say that our partnership with producers in Nepal has resulted in great products, good income for the producers, a greater voice for women, education for their children, more stable communities, and amazing relationships built over 30 years of working together. We have all become the mutually interdependent friends and business partners we had hoped to become so many years ago. So what does creating a fair trade business have to do with the earthquake? Well, you cannot spend 30 years working together without creating close and meaningful relationships, and also creating a sense of shared responsibility for your friends when they need it the most. So when the earthquake struck, we knew we had to help. These were our friends, our coworkers, whose lives had been turned upside down through no fault of their own, and we just simply had to help. Our strong relationships were the driving force in this hour of their greatest need. So we knew we had to help, but at that time, we didn't know where we would get the money. Interestingly, our business cultivated another, different set of relationships that proved to be equally as valuable in this disaster. Relationships that gave us the money to get this work done. Over our 30-plus years as fair trade importers, we developed close relationships with small, independently operated stores throughout North America that carry our Ganeshamal products. Many of these store owners, like Kim Harmson of Kazuri here in Spokane, have watched our work in Nepal and appreciate the strong long-term relationships that we have formed. As these store owners have seen our commitment to Nepal, they have developed a strong trust in the work that we do there and in our concern for our producer partners. They have engaged often with us to fund projects like building and staffing the rural health care clinic. That clinic and a project to provide access to education for girls, among many other projects. These stores also helped us as we created the nonprofit Conscious Connections Foundation to address the needs that our producer partners faced that were really beyond the scope of our business. So when the earthquake happened, there was also no doubt in these store owners' minds that we could connect with people in Nepal to get immediate relief where it was needed, get it there quickly, and get it to those remote areas that needed it most. They had worked with us before and seen it happen. So what happened after I got that 3:30 a.m. call on the morning of April 25th explaining the devastation that had hit Nepal? Well, 5 hours later, at 8:30 the next morning, the phone started ringing and our good friends and customers all over North America started calling and telling us how they would help to raise funds to help our friends in Nepal rebuild. These relationships mattered when disaster struck. It was these funds and businesses that provided the funds that we needed to do the work that had to be done. Because of them, we were able to raise over $200,000 quickly and begin to put it to good use immediately. On April 26th, our home and kitchen table became command central as we fielded calls from our concerned North American friends and customers, and as we searched for our loved ones in Nepal and for ways to provide relief. Our very small nonprofit Conscious Connections Foundation, which had been set up just 6 months earlier with the primary purpose of raising money for the clinic in Nepal and for our Girls Scholarship Program, became the nonprofit vehicle for us to collect funds for earthquake relief. As we were able to contact friends in Nepal, very clear pathways for providing relief began to unfold. And within several weeks of the earthquake, we had already collected and sent enough money to begin to get shelter and food to over 1,000 people in the rural areas most heavily hit. Within 2 weeks, with our Nepali friends' help, CCF had distributed food and shelter to another 1,200 individuals. The clinic that we had built in Nepal was 12.5 miles from the epicenter of the earthquake and had been completely destroyed. But CCF was able to provide funds quickly, and the clinic staff and villagers constructed a temporary tin clinic shelter within days of the earthquake. And within 2 weeks, they were treating up to 8 people a day, as people from even more remote areas traveled there to receive medical help. Our Nepali friends and trekking guides volunteered to travel into areas where there were no roads and were able, less than a month after the earthquake, to provide food, warm clothing, and shelter to another 3,600 families. Conscious Connections Foundation, we are proud to say, through the amazing efforts of our Nepali friends and our donors here, was able to deliver food and shelter to remote parts of Nepal 2 to 3 weeks before large international relief organizations ever arrived. And we were able to do it at an average cost of $20 for food for a family of 4 for an entire month. So how could a tiny, all-volunteer-run nonprofit with no experience in disaster relief do this? We were able to do what we did because friends in North America stepped up, trusted us, and provided the funds. And friends in Nepal from all walks of life volunteered their time to help in any way they could. We were merely the trusted conduits with the long-term relationships in place that allowed this amazing work to happen. Co-workers like Chunta, pictured here in this slide, who manages our business in Nepal and who is familiar with bargaining hard for food and goods, immediately went into the marketplace and was able to buy the best rice, lentils, salt, tea, and sugar and blankets for the lowest price. Here she is putting that food into bags for distribution. Our trekking guide and good friend of 30 years, Ram Karki, and his son Pradeep arranged to deliver this food, these tarps, and blankets to villagers who had lost everything, including their land, due to the earthquakes and resulting landslides. They also helped to distribute over 1,000 solar lights that had been donated to CCF to villages without electricity. This was a huge help. Our business partner of 30 years, A.D. Ariel, bought and delivered corrugated tin from a wholesale supply place. He got a really good price, and he bought food, and he delivered it to a rural village that lost 140 of 143 homes, like this one pictured. Ariel also helped us to orchestrate the rebuilding of their temporary school, so that within 2 weeks of the quake, their children could be back in school with some degree of normalcy. Over the next few months, our nonprofit, Conscious Connections Foundation, was able to provide emergency relief to over 10,000 individuals in some of the hardest hit and remote areas of Nepal, and often far in advance of any of the larger aid organizations, and at much less expense. Our Nepali friends like Dani Gurung volunteered hundreds of hours of time and traveled over unbelievable terrain with early monsoon rains impeding their progress, because they cared so deeply about the plight of their fellow country people, and because they knew they had the resources that Conscious Connections Foundation could supply. We could never have done it without any of these friends in Nepal, or without our friends in North America. Relationships matter, and it was these relationships that got the job done. No questions asked. One of the most touching effects of the relationships built in Nepal was the effect of the earthquake on our then 18-year-old son, Cameron. Cameron grew up going back and forth to Nepal, and when the earthquake struck, he felt he needed to go and help his extended family there. Cameron postponed his departure for college for a year. He created an earthquake section for Conscious Connections Foundation's website in order to inform people about the work that CCF was doing around the earthquake relief in Nepal and to collect donations. Cameron then worked and saved money and paid his way to volunteer for 5 months in Nepal. While Cameron was in Nepal, he worked with and led a team of Nepalis in constructing 2 model earthquake-resilient homes in an area 12.5 miles from the epicenter of the earthquake. He organized with our Nepali friend for these children in this picture the rebuilding of a K-3 primary school. And along with our friend Ishwar, who we've known since he was born, who is now a young Nepali civil engineer, and with a lot of hard work, Cameron started the reconstruction of the rural health care clinic that had been destroyed by the earthquake. His time and commitment to the people of Nepal was directly due to the strong relationships he had formed growing up with the people there. So what is the amazing thing that Conscious Connections Foundation has done? Well, it's really nothing more than what one friend would do for another in times of great need. We provided nourishment, shelter, support, hope, and encouragement for our friends in Nepal when they needed it the most. And we, in turn, were given the support, hope, and encouragement by our friends here in North America when we needed it most. Many thanks to most of you. 2 years ago, if you had asked me if any of what we did would have been possible, I really would have said you were insane. But as I look back over the last year and a half, I have learned that what we actually did wasn't impossible or insane. While we didn't have the expertise or the money that large international disaster relief organizations have, what we did have, and what proved to be our greatest resource and strength, was a cadre of strong, trusted relationships with local Nepalis, relationships we had cultivated over 30 years of doing trade with Nepal and trekking in Nepal, and an equally valuable cadre of friends here in North America who really value our work in Nepal. It was these direct relationships, not money or expertise, that proved to be our greatest asset, and which allowed us to provide humanitarian relief in a far greater than what our size would have indicated. So where do we go from here? Slowly things are rebuilding in Nepal. The rural healthcare clinic in Baseri is rebuilt, and it's now operational with earthquake-resilient technology. The small K-3 primary school has also been rebuilt and is in use, serving 88 little children. 2 model earthbag-resistant homes have been built, and 2 young Nepali families who lost their homes are now living in good, solid homes. Goods are being made for Ganesha Mall, orders are being filled, and income is coming in. Life goes on as Nepalis try to create stability in what is a very unstable environment. For the most part, they're really just taking it one step at a time, enjoying the present moment, and being grateful for the help that they have been given. Conscious Connections Foundation and Ganesha Mall will continue to walk beside them as they rebuild, continually asking them to identify for us those who are the most vulnerable and at risk of being left behind. We will continue to look to our friends in North America for donations as the needs for them arise. We will continue to use these resources entrusted to us frugally and deliver the greatest impact possible. These are the small things that must be done to rebuild lives, and it really will take years. The real work we will continue to do is to cultivate the deep ties between us all, so that we can maintain those strong relationships that bind us together and help us on this rough road we call life. We will remind ourselves daily that it is truly the relationships in life that matter, and that it is relationships that enable us to get the hardest work done, like unloading a truck or loading a truck for an 18-mile-hour ride in the times of greatest need. Thank you all for standing beside us. Namaste.